The unexpected encounter, the void around Proxima Centauri, shimmered with the cold light of distant stars, broken only by the massive hulls of 17 Draconian warships as they emerged from hyperspace. At the center of this formidable fleet, the command vessel Dominion's Fist cut through space like a blade through silk. Its crimson hull gleamed with the reflection of the nearby star, decorated with the golden symbols of conquest that marked every world the Draconian Empire had claimed. Warlord. Kratos stood on the bridge of his flagship, his towering frame casting long shadows across the command deck. His reptilian features were set in their usual expression of cold calculation, yellow eyes scanning the tactical displays with predatory interest. The scales along his neck fluttered slightly, a sign of anticipation that his crew had learned to recognize over their many campaigns together. "Report," Kratos commanded, his voice a low rumble that carried easily across the bridge. The universal translator rendered his words in the common galactic tone, though few species had ever heard a Draconian speak with anything other than threats or demands. General Vorth, his second-in-command, approached with the fluid grace typical of their species. His own scales were darker than his leaders', marked with the scars of a dozen different battlefields. Long-range sensors have detected 5 vessels, approximately 200,000 kilometers ahead. They appear to be civilian craft, possibly merchants or explorers. Kratos allowed himself a thin smile, revealing rows of gleaming teeth. Perfect. The Empire requires new resources, and these unknown vessels will provide both materials and information about their species. He paused, studying the sensor readings more carefully. "What can you tell me about their configuration?" Vorth consulted his data tablet, its alien script scrolling rapidly across the screen. "The ships are small, roughly frigate-sized. They appear to be using basic fusion drives and simple deflector shields. No apparent weapon signatures, beyond what might be expected for anti-asteroid defense systems. Their design is unfamiliar, but primitive." The warlord nodded with satisfaction. This would be another easy addition to the Empire's growing list of conquered peoples. In his 40 years of military service, Kratos had overseen the subjugation of 8 different species. Some had fought bravely, others had surrendered immediately, but all had eventually knelt before the might of the Draconian Empire. These newcomers would be no different. "Open a communication channel," Kratos ordered. "Let us introduce ourselves to these travelers." Meanwhile, aboard the lead vessel of the human convoy, Admiral Elena Vasquez sat comfortably in her command chair, watching the approaching alien fleet with calm interest. Her dark eyes held no trace of fear, only the quiet confidence of someone who had prepared extensively for this exact moment. Around her, the bridge of the merchant vessel Prosperity hummed with quiet activity, though any observer would notice that the crew moved with the disciplined precision of military personnel rather than civilian traders. "Admiral," called Captain Marcus Chun from his position at the sensor station. Despite the cramped confines of what appeared to be a cargo hauler's bridge, Chun carried himself with the bearing of a seasoned officer. "The alien fleet has assumed standard intimidation formation. 17 vessels, including what appears to be their command ship. They're broadcasting on standard frequencies." Admiral Vasquez smiled slightly, brushing a strand of graying hair from her forehead. "Right on schedule, Marcus. Put them through. And remember, everyone, we're simple merchants who happen to stumble into the wrong neighborhood." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Warlord Kratos. His alien features were both magnificent and terrifying, exactly as the intelligence reports had described. Behind him, the Draconian command bridge stretched away in gleaming metal and harsh lighting, displaying the cold efficiency of a military machine. "Unknown vessels," Kratos began, his translated voice carrying unmistakable authority. "You have entered space claimed by the Draconian Empire. I am Warlord Krathos, commander of the 17th Conquest Fleet. Identify yourselves and state your business in Imperial territory. Admiral Vasquez stood slowly, straightening her simple civilian clothing. To the Draconians, she would appear to be nothing more than a middle-aged human trader, perhaps slightly overwhelmed by the situation, but trying to maintain her composure. Greetings, Warlord Krathos. I am Elena Vasquez, captain of the Merchant. Vessel Prosperity. We're part of a small trading convoy from Earth, exploring new routes for commercial opportunities. We had no idea this system was claimed by your empire. Krathos studied the human female with interest. She seemed calm despite facing overwhelming odds, which was either admirable courage or simple ignorance. Earth, he repeated thoughtfully. Your species is unknown to us. This suggests you are from beyond our current sphere of influence. That's correct, Vasquez replied easily. We're relatively new to interstellar travel. Our convoy was simply following promising trade routes. When we detected your fleet, we certainly mean no intrusion or disrespect. General Vorth leaned close to his commander, speaking in low tones that the human translation systems couldn't quite capture. Krathos nodded slightly, then returned his attention to the screen. Captain Vasquez, the warlord said, his tone becoming more formal. The Draconian Empire has established laws governing contact with new species. Your vessels and their contents are hereby claimed as Imperial property. Your crews will be processed for evaluation and assignment to appropriate labor positions within the Empire. Resistance will result in the destruction of your ships and the termination of your people. There was a moment of silence on the human bridge. Several crew members exchanged glances, though their expressions showed more amusement than fear. Admiral Vasquez tilted her head slightly, as if considering the alien's words carefully. That's quite an offer, Warlord, she said eventually, her voice carrying a hint of something that might have been humor. However, I'm afraid we'll have to decline. You see, we have prior commitments to fulfill, and our corporate policies strictly forbid being enslaved by alien empires. Krathos's eyes narrowed dangerously. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever responded to his demands with what appeared to be gentle mockery. You misunderstand the situation, human. This is not a negotiation. Your ships are surrounded and completely outgunned. Surrender is your only option. Admiral Vasquez nodded thoughtfully. I understand your perspective, Warlord. From where you're sitting, this must look like a very straightforward situation. 5 small merchant vessels against 17 military ships. The odds do seem rather one-sided. Indeed they are, Krathos confirmed grimly. You have demonstrated intelligence by recognizing this fact. Perhaps your species can be trained for more sophisticated tasks than manual labor? Oh, I think we can be quite sophisticated when the situation calls for it, Vasquez replied, her smile becoming more pronounced. In fact, I believe you might be surprised by just how sophisticated we can be. Captain Chun looked up from his station. Admiral, should I begin the standard first contact protocols? Not yet, Marcus, Vasquez replied without taking her eyes off the alien commander. I think Warlord Krathos might benefit from understanding exactly who he's dealing with before we proceed further. Krathos felt a stirring of unease at the humans. Continued confidence. In his experience, species facing immediate conquest typically responded with either terror or desperate defiance. This calm amusement was entirely outside his frame of reference. Explain yourself, human, he demanded. What possible reason do you have for confidence in this situation? Admiral Vasquez gestured casually toward her bridge crew. Well, for starters, we've been expecting to meet you for quite some time, Warlord. In fact, we've been preparing for this exact conversation for the better part of 3 years. General Vorth straightened suddenly, his scales shifting to a darker pattern that indicated alarm. Commander, he said urgently, recommend immediate attack. Something is wrong here. But Kratos held up a clawed hand, his predator's instincts telling him that there was more to this situation than appeared on the surface. "Continue, Captain Vasquez." "You see," the human continued conversationally, "when humanity first began, exploring beyond our home system, we made it a priority to learn about our neighbors. We discovered quite a lot about the Draconian Empire, actually. Your conquest patterns, your military tactics, your technology levels, even your command structure. We've been monitoring your communications for decades." The warlord's expression shifted from annoyance to genuine concern. "Impossible. Our encryption systems are beyond the capabilities of any known species." "Known to you, perhaps," Vasquez agreed pleasantly. "But then, there are quite a few things about the galaxy that the Draconian Empire doesn't know yet. For instance, you know that the 17 ships in your current fleet are designated as the 17th Conquest Fleet, under your personal command, and that your next scheduled target was the Altarian system?" Kratos felt a chill run down his spine. That information was classified at the highest levels of Imperial command. No outsider should have access to such details. Admiral Vasquez continued as if discussing the weather. "We also know that your Empire is currently dealing with supply shortages in Sector 7 through 12, that your shipyards are operating at only 60% capacity due to recent labor unrest, and that there's a growing faction within your government that questions the sustainability of constant expansion." "This is impossible," General Vorth whispered, but his words carried clearly across the bridge. "Not impossible at all," Vasquez replied cheerfully. "Just a different approach to galactic relations than you're used to. Where your empire expands through conquest, humanity prefers to expand through understanding. We find it much more efficient. In the long run." Kratos struggled to process what he was hearing. No primitive species should possess intelligence capabilities that exceeded his own empire's security measures. "You claim to have been monitoring us for decades. Yet this is our first encounter with your species." "Oh, you've never seen us before." "Because we didn't want you to see us," the human admiral explained patiently. "We've been very careful to study your empire from a safe distance while we prepared for eventual contact. Today seemed like an appropriate time for introductions." The Draconian commander felt his certainty beginning to erode. Everything about this encounter was wrong. The humans should be terrified, pleading for mercy, or at least attempting some form of desperate resistance. Instead, they seemed almost relaxed, as if they were the ones in control of the situation. "Admiral," Captain Shun called out, "sensors indicate the Draconian fleet is beginning to adjust their formation. Standard encirclement pattern. Perfectly predictable." Vasquez nodded approvingly. "Warlord, I notice your ships are moving into attack positions. While I appreciate your tactical thoroughness, I feel I should mention that hostilities would be quite inadvisable at this point." Kratos' control finally snapped. "Inadvisable? You are 5 small ships facing the might of the Imperial fleet. Your confidence borders on insanity." Admiral Vasquez's expression became more serious, though her voice remained calm. "Warlord Kratos, I want you to understand something very important. Those 17 ships of yours? They're magnificent examples of Draconian engineering. Powerful, well-armed, and crewed by competent professionals. Under normal circumstances, they would indeed be more than capable of destroying 5 merchant vessels." She paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. "However, these are not normal circumstances, and we are not merchant vessels." The human admiral made a subtle gesture to her crew. Captain Shun nodded and began entering commands into his console with practiced efficiency. "You see, Warlord," Vasquez continued, "humanity learned something very important during our early expansion into space. We learned that the galaxy is full of species like yours, powerful, aggressive, and convinced of their own superiority. We realized that if we wanted to survive and thrive out here, we would need to be smarter, not just stronger. As she spoke, the 5 human ships began to change. The transformation was subtle at first, just a slight shimmer around their hulls, as if heat were rising from their surfaces. Then the changes became more dramatic. The boxy, utilitarian appearance of the merchant vessels began to shift and flow, like liquid metal. Hull plates rearranged themselves, revealing sleek curves beneath. Weapon ports opened along surfaces that had appeared smooth moments before. Sensor arrays extended from hidden compartments, and the entire configuration of each ship altered into something far more threatening. Holographic camouflage, Admiral Vasquez explained as the transformation completed. Very useful for observing potential threats without alarming them. What you're seeing now are the true forms of our vessels. The T-E-Sis Defiance, T-E's Resilience, Tay's Ingenuity, Tay's Perseverance, and my flagship, the T-E-S Determination. Warlord Kratos stared at the screen in shock as his sensors updated their readings on the human fleet. The energy signatures were completely different now, showing power. Levels that rivaled his own heavy cruisers. The weapon configurations were unlike anything in the Draconian database, and the ships themselves seemed to defy several known principles of space engineering. "This is still impossible," General Vorth muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. "I understand your confusion," Admiral Vasquez said sympathetically. "Your empire has grown accustomed to being the most advanced civilization in this region. But the galaxy is a very large place, Warlord, and there are always new things to discover." She gestured toward the transformed human vessels. "These ships represent the combined efforts of not just humanity, but several other species who have chosen cooperation over conquest. You see, while your empire has been busy enslaving civilizations, we've been busy making friends with them." The implications of her words hit Kratos like a physical blow. If this human was telling the truth, then the Draconian Empire was not the dominant power it believed itself to be. There were other civilizations out there, working together, potentially powerful enough to threaten everything his people had built. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Admiral Vasquez smiled, but this time there was genuine warmth in her expression rather than amusement. "What we want, Warlord Kratos, is to offer your empire something it has never had before, the opportunity to choose a different path." The revelation Warlord Kratos felt the familiar weight of command pressing down on his shoulders. But for the first time in decades, that weight carried uncertainty rather than confidence. The 5 human vessels hung in space before his fleet like predators masquerading as prey, their true forms now revealed in all their sleek, dangerous beauty. Everything about this encounter had defied his expectations, and the reptilian commander found himself in the uncomfortable position of being the one who was outmaneuvered. "A different path," he repeated slowly, tasting the alien concept. "Explain yourself, human." Admiral Vasquez nodded, as if she had expected this exact response. "Captain Shun, please transmit the standard diplomatic package to the Draconian fleet. Full spectrum. All their major languages and communication protocols." "Aye, Admiral," Chun replied, his fingers dancing across his console. "Package transmitted. They should be receiving detailed information about the Galactic Cooperative, our member species, and our founding principles." "Across the void, General." Vorth stared at his suddenly overwhelmed communication systems as data flooded in from the human vessels. The information was staggering in its scope and detail. Star charts showing dozens of systems he had never seen, technical specifications for technologies that seemed impossible, and most disturbing of all, detailed intelligence reports about the Draconian Empire that were more complete than some of their own internal documents. "Warlord," Vorth said, his voice tight with controlled panic. "They know everything. Ship movements, resource allocations, personnel assignments, even classified research projects. This level of intelligence penetration should be impossible. Kratos studied the data streaming across his screens, his military mind automatically cataloging threats and opportunities. The information was genuine. He could tell by the specific details that only someone with deep access to Imperial systems could possess. But the implications were staggering. "How long have you been watching us?" he demanded. "Since your conquest of the Centauri colonies, approximately 73 Earth years ago," Admiral Vasquez replied matter-of-factly. "That was when we first became aware of your Empire's expansion patterns and decided we needed to prepare for eventual contact." The human admiral gestured toward the data still flowing to the Draconian ships. "What you're receiving now is just a small sample of what we've learned. We know about your supply chains, your military capabilities, your political structure, and your social systems. We know about the rebellions you've suppressed, the species you've enslaved, and the resources you've extracted from conquered worlds. Asterisk, asterisk." Captain Shun looked up from his station. "Admiral, should I activate the demonstration protocols?" "Not yet, Marcus," Vasquez replied. "I think Warlord Kratos deserves a full explanation before we show him what humanity is truly capable of." She turned back to the main screen, her expression becoming more serious. "Warlord, let me tell you a story about humanity. When we first developed faster-than-light travel, we were much like your empire is now. Aggressive, confident, convinced that our way of doing things was the only way that mattered. We encountered our first alien species, the Zephyrians, and our initial instinct was to dominate them." The Admiral paused, allowing her words to sink in. "But something interesting happened during that first contact. The Zephyrians didn't fight us or surrender to us. Instead, they offered to teach us something we had never considered: how to listen." General Vorth's scales shifted to a pattern of deep confusion. "Listen? To what?" "To the galaxy itself," Vasquez replied. "You see, space is not empty as we once believed. It's full of voices, full of civilizations trying to communicate, to trade, to share knowledge and culture. But when all you do is conquer and destroy, you never hear those voices." She gestured toward her transformed fleet. "The technologies you see here weren't developed by humanity alone. The gravitational manipulation systems came from the Centaurian Republic. The quantum communication arrays were a gift from the Pleiadian Collective. The defensive shields are based on principles taught to us by the survivors of worlds your empire destroyed." Kratos felt a chill of recognition. Several of the civilizations she had mentioned were ones his forces had conquered decades ago. "Impossible. We eliminated those species." "You eliminated their homeworlds," Admiral Vasquez corrected gently. "But civilizations are more than just planets, Warlord. They're people, ideas, knowledge, and culture. Many individuals escaped your conquests, and they found sanctuary with species like humanity who are willing to offer friendship instead of chains." The revelation hit the Draconian commander like a blow to his core. Everything his empire had built was based on the assumption that destroyed civilizations stayed destroyed. The possibility that their victims had survived and united against them was something no Imperial strategist had ever considered. "You're claiming that our former victims have joined together under human leadership," General Vorth said, his voice barely controlled. "Not under human leadership," Vasquez corrected. "As equal partners in the Galactic Cooperative. Humanity doesn't rule other species, Warlord. We work with them." Captain Shun interrupted with a status report. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting movement in the outer system. Looks like the Draconians have reinforcements en route. Estimated 12 additional vessels. Arrival in approximately 40 minutes." Admiral Vasquez nodded calmly. "Thank you, Marcus. Warlord Kratos, I assume those are the reserve ships from your main fleet?" Kratos started in surprise. How could you possibly know about our deployment patterns? Because we've been preparing for this encounter for 3 years, the human admiral replied patiently. We know that Draconian doctrine calls for a reserve force to remain at maximum sensor range during first contact situations. We know that your reinforcements consist of 8 heavy cruisers, 3 destroyers, and a command carrier. We also know that their arrival won't change the fundamental nature of our conversation. The casual way she discussed his military secrets was more unnerving than any direct threat could have been. Kratos realized that his entire fleet was operating under assumptions that had been compromised from the beginning. What do you want? From us? He asked again, though this time the question carried desperation rather than defiance. We want you to make a choice, Admiral Vasquez replied. The same choice that humanity made 73 years ago when we encountered the Zephyrians. You can continue on your current path of conquest and domination, knowing now that you're facing opponents who are better prepared and more capable than anything you've encountered before. Or you can choose to listen. She gestured toward the data still flowing to his ships. The Galactic Cooperative isn't just a military alliance, Warlord. It's a community of civilizations working together to explore the galaxy, to advance knowledge, and to build something better than what any of us could achieve alone. General Vorth leaned close to his commander. Sir, recommend we contact Imperial Command immediately. This situation is beyond our current mission parameters. No, Kratos said quietly. Not yet. He studied the human admiral's face, searching for deception or hidden motives. You claim to offer cooperation, but you have us surrounded and outgunned. How is this different from conquest? Admiral Vasquez smiled, and for the first time, Kratos saw genuine sadness in her expression. Because we're giving you a choice, Warlord, and because we're prepared to demonstrate the difference between our capabilities and our intentions. She nodded to Captain Shun. Marcus, please show our guests what humanity has learned about defensive technologies. The human fleet suddenly burst into activity, but not in any way the Draconians had expected. Instead of weapons charging or ships maneuvering for attack, a series of brilliant energy fields began to expand outward from each vessel. The fields intersected and merged, creating a complex geometric pattern that soon encompassed the entire area of space containing both fleets. Defensive grid activated, Sean reported. All vessels secured within the protection matrix. Whoa, Lord. Kratos stared at his tactical displays in amazement. The energy fields surrounding his fleet showed readings unlike anything in the Draconian database. More significantly, his sensors indicated that the fields were equally distributed around both human and Draconian ships. What is this? He demanded. Protection. Admiral Vasquez replied simply. The defensive grid shields all vessels within its boundaries from outside interference. Your reinforcements, when they arrive, will find it impossible to penetrate these fields with any form of weaponry. More importantly, neither can we attack you while the grid is active. General Vorth checked his readings frantically. Warlord, she's correct. Our weapons are non-functional while this field is in place, but so are theirs. They've created a zone where neither side can harm the other. But why? Kratos asked, genuinely puzzled by this display of apparent vulnerability. Because trust has to start somewhere, Admiral Vasquez explained. We could have destroyed your fleet before you even knew we were here. Our stealth capabilities are centuries ahead of your detection systems. We could have disabled your ships without killing your crews, or eliminated your ability to communicate with your reinforcements. Instead, we chose to reveal ourselves and offer you the opportunity for dialogue. She gestured toward the protective field surrounding both fleets. This grid demonstrates something fundamental about the Galactic Cooperative's philosophy. We don't believe that strength should be used. to dominate others. We believe it should be used to protect everyone, even those who might consider themselves our enemies. The concept was so foreign to draconian thinking that Kratos found it difficult to process. In his entire military career, strength had always been a tool for conquest. The idea of using superior capabilities to protect an opponent was outside his frame of reference. "I don't understand," he admitted finally. "Then let me show you something else," Admiral Vasquez said. "Captain Shun, please activate the historical archives. Show Warlord Kratos what happened to the last empire that chose conquest over cooperation." The main screen shifted to display a series of images and data files. Kratos found himself looking at star charts of a region of space he didn't recognize, showing the territories of something called the Hegemonic Alliance. The data indicated a civilization that had controlled nearly 50 star systems through military force and economic domination. The Hegemonic Alliance was remarkably similar to your empire, Admiral Vasquez narrated as the images continued. They conquered other species, enslaved populations, and extracted resources from subjugated worlds. They believed their military superiority made them invincible. The images shifted to show ruined worlds and dead space installations. The Alliance fell not because they were defeated in battle, but because their approach to galactic civilization was ultimately unsustainable. Their conquered populations eventually united against them. Their resources were exhausted maintaining control over unwilling subjects. Their military became stretched thin, trying to suppress constant rebellions. Kratos studied the images with growing unease. The parallels to his own empire were unmistakable. The draconian military was indeed stretched thin across multiple systems, and they had been dealing with increasing incidents of rebellion and sabotage. The Alliance had a choice. Admiral Vasquez continued. They could adapt to the changing galaxy or fight to maintain their dying system. They chose to fight. The war lasted for 12 years and devastated 3 entire sectors of space. The final images showed empty star systems where once thriving civilizations had existed. In the end, everyone lost. The Alliance was destroyed, but so were most of the civilizations they had oppressed. Billions died, and entire species went extinct. General Vorth's scales had shifted to their palest shade, indicating deep fear. What happened to the survivors? They learned, Admiral Vasquez replied. The few remaining civilizations in that region eventually formed the foundation of what became the Galactic Cooperative. They swore that such devastation would never happen again, and they committed themselves to finding better ways for different species to coexist. She turned her attention back to Warlord Kratos. Your empire stands at the same crossroads the Hegemonic Alliance faced. You can continue on your current path and eventually face the same fate they did. Or you can choose to learn from their mistakes and help us build something better. Kratos was quiet for a long moment, processing everything he had seen and heard. His entire worldview was being challenged by concepts he had never seriously considered. The possibility that there was an alternative to conquest and domination opened up possibilities he had never imagined. What would this cooperation look like? He asked finally. Admiral Vasquez smiled, and this time there was genuine hope in her expression. It would look like the Draconian Empire using its considerable capabilities to build rather than destroy. Your engineering skills, your organizational abilities, your cultural achievements, all of these could contribute to something greater than any single civilization could accomplish alone. She gestured toward the protective fields still surrounding both fleets. It would look like former enemies working together to solve problems that affect everyone. Pirates threatening trade routes, natural disasters requiring massive rescue, operations, scientific challenges that need diverse perspectives to solve. Captain Shun looked up from his station. Admiral, the Draconian reinforcements are now within long-range sensor range. They're scanning the defensive grid and requesting instructions from their command vessel. Admiral Vasquez nodded. Warlord, Kratos, your reinforcements have arrived. This is the moment when you must make your choice. You can order them to attack the defensive grid, though I should mention that such an attack would be both futile and dangerous to your own ships. You can continue with your original mission of conquest, knowing now what kind of opposition you truly face. Or you can make history by becoming the first Draconian commander to choose cooperation over conflict. The weight of the decision pressed down on Kratos like the gravity of a massive planet. Everything he had been trained for, everything his empire stood for, was being challenged by this remarkable human and her impossible fleet. But beneath his military conditioning, a part of him that had been suppressed for decades was awakening. The part that remembered wonder, curiosity, and the possibility of growth. He looked around his bridge at his crew, seeing the same uncertainty in their eyes that he felt in his own hearts. They were all products of a system that had never offered them alternatives to conquest and domination. But now, faced with beings who wielded superior power, yet offered partnership instead of submission, they were being forced to confront the possibility that there might be better ways to exist in the galaxy. Admiral Vasquez, Kratos said slowly, his voice carrying the weight of a civilization's future, show me what cooperation looks like.